Happy Super Bowl Sunday, Maddie.
Fly, Eagles, fly. Let's go.
I hate you so much. You can tell we were having to re-record this at this point. You know, whatever. So we'll save the jokes real fast. Oklahoma. Let's just pretend like everybody's been listening and they've heard us
They've heard us do this 3 times.
3 times at this point because the audio keeps messing up. Number 1, Oklahoma has the most teams in the Super Bowl. Maddie hates Oklahoma for regionality purposes. Number 3, I hate watching the Super Bowl this year because I hate both teams. And number 4,
we also think Rihanna's going to win.
Oh, yeah, Rihanna wins the Super Bowl by default. And number 5, the whole point of this whole thing, Texas and Oklahoma are joining the SEC sooner than expected. Hi, I'm David. Welcome to this Hoop Southbound podcast and that express way of cold open that we just did.
I like it. Hey guys, it's Maddie.
You can't tell we're a little bit frustrated with technology today, or at least I'm getting there. I don't know what to tell you at this point.
We'll get there someday. That's how I feel about it right now.
Someday, when this show is huge, we'll have a tech back in the booth who handles all these little problems and goes,
Avery will hire you.
My wife just gave a thumbs up. Today we are recording in my living room because it is Super Bowl Sunday, and stuff has been shoved into the guest room, which is also our normal studio, where we record all the other podcasts. But is what it is. This is
Change
where we
of
are
scenery
today.
Might be nice for the people.
It might be. It might be, Maddie. And we get the huge 65-inch screen TV in which we will be watching the game later, and eat the chicken wings that I do make for the game, which is another reason why we are going to get this podcast done as fast as possible.
David brings wings, I bring tequila. That's the way it works around here.
Absolutely. I mean, I got a fridge full of beer and everything else. We're going to be ready to rock on this thing. Let's talk about the news, though, first, that, Texas and Oklahoma are coming to the SEC. Let's get started there.
Yeah, so, we've obviously talked about it a few times now. I think there's a few pros and a few cons to them coming in. Pros, you have a lot of new fans, a lot more money that are going to be coming in from those fan bases. And regionally, some SEC schools are going to be a lot closer when it comes to traveling. And then, I think the cons of the side are looking at there's 2 more schools added to an already packed conference. So I think what we see is a shift in more of an SEC East and SEC West situation moving forward.
Yeah, it's definitely, there is a dividing line now. And it's kind of like the Greater South and the Deep South is actually almost how it speaks now to some level of volume. But it is interesting, right? Because from a basketball perspective, you have 2 pretty good programs that are joining. Everybody knows how they are in football. Everybody knows the names Texas and Oklahoma when it comes to football. But both teams are pretty good historically when it comes to basketball. You're talking about Oklahoma, who's been the runner-up to the NCAA tournament twice. Mm-hmm. Texas has multiple Final Four appearances, which is going to put them historically in way of March finishes goes in the top 5 teams or so of the SEC, somewhere top 6, top 5 teams of the SEC. That's interesting. And then you've also got the money perspective. They're right in the middle of the pack with the income that basketball revenue generates in there. You've got a brand new stadium in Texas with the Moody Center that's going to be added into the rotation for the SEC. You have this rebirth of rivalries between Arkansas and Texas. Arkansas is probably about the 3rd or 4th most important rival for Texas. Yeah. And, recently you probably say Texas Tech is 3rd, but historically Arkansas would probably be the 3rd most important. Probably about the 2nd most important in Arkansas fans' minds right now. And then you've got also the relationship between Mizzou and Oklahoma and Texas A&M and Texas. That's going to be huge. Those are going to be big games that generate back to the Big 12 and this, Central South kind of regionality, as you said earlier. So it's going to be fun to bring some of this stuff back. And then also, Texas and Oklahoma put a lot of players in the NBA as well.
Yep. Think of First things first, Kevin Durant comes to my mind.
Kevin Durant, yeah.
I'm trying to think for Oklahoma. I can't
Blake Griffin.
Blake Griffin,
yeah. You got big Blake Griffin out there.
I forgot about him. He's under the Kardashian curse, I think, still.
I think he's the cover of the last NCAA basketball video game. Wow. I think he's the cover athlete for it. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, it's him wearing the Oklahoma Sooners jersey, putting a dunk down. It's pretty awesome. But yeah, we're going to have some great teams joining. Of course, we won't see this until the summer of 2024. Texas and Oklahoma having to pay $100 million to get out of their current arrangement with the Big 12.
Yep.
And then we've also got the situation with, basketball is not going to tip off until anywhere close to October 2024 is when we'll actually probably have our first preseason conversation on what kind of season we can expect from Texas and Oklahoma,
Yep. I think it'll be interesting. It'll be an added layer to the show. Hopefully we'll get some more fans in the Oklahoma and Texas regions.
Yeah, for sure. That'll be a lot of fun. I think we've already got fans down in Texas, but they're mostly, A&M and Arkansas alumni who live in Dallas.
And, your brothers who hate listening to give
They're
you a hard
Texas
time.
fans, yeah, but, they live in Arkansas, which, find them. They're traitors. You should tell them that. Let's talk about the biggest storyline from the show this week. Actually, first, Maddie, what are your initial thoughts on this overall week in the SEC?
For me, I think it's like somebody dropped a bomb and it just blew up, and so many different teams were affected by it. We see Tennessee going back-to-back losses, which we'll get into here in a little bit, and teams that weren't supposed to win come out with a win, and teams that weren't supposed to lose took the L.
I mean, if you're a gambler, no one was safe this weekend. Not a soul. Not a soul was safe. If you took a favorite, you might as well just been flushing your money down the toilet this week. It was crazy because, you had Arkansas go on the road in Kentucky and just stomp everybody in Rupp. Played a heck of a game there. Tennessee goes on the road to Vandy in Nashville. Vandy beats Tennessee in kind of a shocker, a game that Vandy fans were very pumped about winning.
Yep.
You've also got, additional upsets with Mizzou beating Tennessee, and then another big one. I believe Florida got upset by Vandy.
Yep.
And, it even affected the bottom of the conference, too. Ole Miss getting beat by South Carolina and Oxford this week. It was nuts. It was absolutely a crazy
week for basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Yeah, it was nuts. But let's talk about the namesake of this episode and why it is Barnes Breakdown in this. And we are talking about the team that got impacted the most out of this craziness, and that would be the Tennessee Volunteers.
Yeah, I said it last week, I'll say it again. I think we've seen Tennessee's peak. I've been hesitant to say that they're number one all year because I just felt it in my soul it was going to happen, and I think it's finally catching up. We're seeing games that they shouldn't lose come down to the wire and huge upsets, and it's just kind of like a trickle-down effect. I feel like after Kentucky went to Tennessee and beat them at home, it's like they haven't been the same team.
I think, as you said earlier, they peaked.
Yep.
It just feels like that at this point, and I don't know what to say. In Tennessee's last two losses, the Vols, allowed 10 or more three-point field goals made in that game. That's nuts. This is one of the best defenses in the SEC. They don't normally allow that. And then here's Vandy and Mizzou lighting it up from deep. And, one, their respected home arena, and then two, in TBA.
Yeah. Against
one of the best three-point defenses in the SEC. It's kind of an anomaly. They lost both games on a buzzer beater 3, which is, I don't even know the odds of that happening. Like, that's just ludicrous on some level. I don't know what to necessarily say. Are the Vols just unlucky, or is this the sign of something worse?
I think it's the sign of the end of their season. We've kind of talked about it. We talked about it in our early episodes, how the Vols start out red hot, and then around tournament time, they just can't come through and get the win. And I think that happened last year, but we saw their peak at the SEC tournament, and then it just went downhill. And this year, they've peaked a little earlier. So I don't know. Maybe they need to take a few weeks off next summer than when they traditionally start. I don't know what to tell them.
I don't know exactly what the issue is. You've got Rick Barnes. I'm not calling Rick Barnes necessarily a hot seat, but Tennessee fans are frustrated with hitting a ceiling every time.
Yep.
It's not March Madness yet. I'm not saying that they have hit a ceiling and they're not going to get through there. We won't know that until we're playing the actual tournament. But signs are starting to indicate this is starting to look like last season all over again, and I just don't know what to tell you. There's concern for how far Rick Barnes can actually take Tennessee. And so right now, if I'm a Vols fan, people are going to start getting upset. And, a lot of people are going to, Vols fans who have been a little bit less friendly, toward their own fans and everything like that on social media. Today they're celebrating their victories after that Mizzou buzzer beater and back-to-back losses, They were favored in 3 out of their 4 last games, and 2 of those games were in Knoxville. They lost them.
Yep.
And a lot of people thought this team had Final Four potential, but it's starting to look like they're falling out of that category quickly.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's going to be one of those situations where we're going to have to look really deep at this Alabama and Tennessee game coming up this week, and then when the Vols go to Kentucky, how they're going to fare against a less than fantastic Kentucky team as well.
Massive schedule, with 2 Q1 opportunities for the Vols this week. Of course, we're going to do the interview with Christian Sykes here in just a minute, and our Bama section that's going to be coming up immediately after we get done talking about Tennessee. Let's look a little bit more at Kentucky, because Kentucky, they're in a desperate spot for some wins, and neither one of these teams are playing well. And you're in Lexington. This is a really scary game if you're Tennessee, especially coming off a game against Alabama. Now, wounded animal mode is a real thing, and revenge is a real thing. But last time these teams played, Kentucky dominated the boards by plus 20.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a must-win, honestly, for both teams here.
It's not a must-win for the Vols for the sake of making the tournament, but it's a must-win to get your season back on track. Yeah.
And, the way that they've been playing both teams, honestly, if Alabama comes in, tears up Tennessee, are they going to be able to handle Kentucky the way that they should be?
And one thing that I will say is that Kentucky does a great job of getting boards. That's who they are. They do a great job of rebounding the basketball. In that first game, Oscar Tshiebwe had 13 boards in that game, and several of them came off the offensive glass. Then the other side of that is Tennessee didn't shoot well from 3 in that game. They shot 14%, and they had 3 3-point field goals made. Vescovi's got to have a better game for Tennessee when they go to Lexington.
Yeah, Tennessee's got to get their offense back on track. We've talked time and time again about how great they are defensively, but they're lacking offense, and I think this is what's catching up with them now, is that other teams have figured this out, and now that they're looking forward, they're going to have to do some work on the offensive end to move forward anywhere.
I'll challenge that even more. Like there's a couple fold things there. I'll take that even a step further. From the defensively, they have to stop the ball movement, because Jerry Stackhouse's scheme tore them apart with the way that they moved that basketball at home. Now, granted, Vandy shot extremely well, but they worked for open shots the entire game. They weren't settling the entire time in that game. And then also, when you look at Tennessee from the free throw line, they do not get to the free throw line enough. They're in the bottom half of the SEC in free throw attempts. They just do not do a good job getting to the line. You can talk about the Arizona game. You can talk about the first Kentucky game. You can talk about even Vandy this week or last week. Vandy was in a situation where they didn't foul enough, and it almost cost them the game because they only had 2 fouls in the last 2 minutes. They were having to foul every time Tennessee inbounded the ball, and they were doing this on repeat. Having to quickly foul to get Tennessee to the free throw line, and somehow Tennessee misses a free throw, and Vandy is able to get the half-court call timeout and then get the game-winner shot.
Should I say it, David?
What?
Free throws win basketball games.
Free throws do win basketball games, and part of winning free throws is to get to the actual line. You have to have free throw attempts to win at free throws.
Exactly.
So, you got to draw contact. You got to do things like that. It's just something we haven't seen Tennessee be proficient at, and it is a concern.
And I think, it might be one of those things that Tennessee has become pretty reliant on their three-point shooters getting those offensive points for them instead of taking the ball in, making drives, going to the basket, and drawing the foul.
Yeah. So in this game, like I said, I think rebounds are going to be the biggest thing for the Kentucky matchup. You're going to have good games from Key. You're going to have good games from Phillips and Plavich. You need you guys to show up.
Yeah.
And you got to fight Oscar on the boards the entire night, and everybody on this Kentucky team, because they rebound. I don't have a lot of faith in Kentucky doing a lot of things good, but offensive rebounding is one of those things that I think they do pretty dang well. Yeah. Let's talk about the Vols next game. We have an interview with Christian Sykes from Crimson Crossover talking about Alabama, and in that we'll have a little bit of a preview for Tennessee and Alabama. And this interview today is brought to you by SeatGeek. Right now you can get $20 off your first purchase from SeatGeek using the SeatGeek app and our promo code VSN. I'm a fan of SeatGeek. I like the fact that they include the fees on there. so you actually know what you're paying, because you can pay some ridiculous fees to go see the return of Nick Smith Jr., this historic Alabama team, or the downfall of Kentucky, or whatever you want to call it right now. It's a really great app. It's really easy to use to go find a deal or anything on there. So I'm a fantasy geek. They're a good app. I've used them before. Easy way to find tickets.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things I'm still kind of getting used to when you look at, some of their competitors and you're like, oh, the price is like $50 different on here. Like, no, it's just the fees are included. I have to remind myself of that every time I go on the app.
Yep. I mean, it's nice to know, because you're getting a better estimate, I should say, when you don't include taxes and what. But right now you can get that $20 off using promo code VSN. And today we are welcoming into the show Christian Sykes of Crimson Crossover. And he is hyped up right now because, my goodness, Alabama is kicking everybody's tail across this conference. How you doing today, Christian?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing pretty good. Pretty good. Yeah. So let's start with a little bit of a conversation here. I saw this on Twitter, and I know it's been a huge talking point for a while in Alabama, and that is either renovating Coleman or building a new stadium. What is the latest going on out there in Crimson Tide land?
Yeah, so I'll just give a little bit of a backstory. So when we initially announced this program called the Crimson Standard a few years ago, there was like 3 different phases. Phase 1 being renovating Bryant-Denny Stadium to include these suite level type of box seats. And the reason why they did that first, because a lot of people are like, oh, of course Alabama's going to invest in their football program, is, Alabama football is what generates the money for the rest of the athletic department. Those box seats that they built were, I think, like $1 million box seats. So like for every single box seat, you had to at least donate $1 million in order to get one, plus the annual fees. So the thought process was, hey, let's do these box seats so that it can then fund the rest of the project, which was a $600 million Crimson Standard project to basically renovate all of the athletics. That was announced, I think, 2017, I want to say. And then in that initial plan was a $90 million renovation for Coleman Coliseum, aka the hangar, because that hadn't been renovated since the 90s, I believe. And as the basketball program evolved, we hired Nate Oates. Success started to kind of compound. They thought, or the athletic department and Greg Byrne thought, it would be a better idea to actually build a new arena, because you could do more with it than just take the bare bones. And that announcement happened last February, and it was a $183 million project or build that was going to happen. They didn't give a timetable, but it was in the initial stages last February. Obviously, we're dealing with historic inflation, and have been over the last year. That $183 million project has increased to $250 million just to build the new arena, which was not, that extra $70 million that wasn't built in or caked into the, fundraising. And on top of that, NIL came out, and, that kind of process kind of shaped differently how, donations and fundraising is happening, because your boosters are allowed to donate to these collectives or entities like Yay Alabama that we just launched. And for a guy like Nate Oates, what do you want? Do you want this new fancy arena, or do you want elite talented players? It's kind of a to toss up decision. And obviously I think for most coaches, they would keep the old arena and get the new players like a Brandon Miller or Noah Clowney or some of these other guys that we're bringing in.
That totally makes sense. Part of the conversation that I heard, I guess, in the interview was about, once we're going, we're going. So that's been kind of the holdup, is that they want kind of a firm price before they tell the general public what's happening next. Or am I misunderstanding what's being said there?
Yeah, so I'm assuming you listened to the next round interview with Greg Byrne, and he basically said the few meetings that they were having with architects, every single time that they came back, the price would increase by $25 million, increase. to the point where I think their thought process is they want to wait until the inflation levels out so that they're not, as they start building, you're not getting hit with, oh, it's going to be an additional $10 million to do this. Oh, this price to, the material cost is increased by $15 million. You know what I'm saying? They want a firm, like, hey, this is the price. This is what we're locked into this, and we can't really change anything. And so, I know our fans are they're kind of pushing it. If you look under Greg Burns' tweets, every single tweet is arena, build the arena, build the arena. He actually sent out a tweet yesterday that was like addressing that. And he's like, I appreciate the passion and the consistency, and we're working on it every single day. But they're being fiscally responsible, which is what you want from your athletic department.
No, I definitely understand, like, especially if you're going to build something that's supposed to be like on par with, say, like the Moody Center in Texas, something that's going to be that grand. You definitely want to get the numbers right. That seems like a pretty crucial point. All right, let's go ahead.
Oh, I think it's one of those situations where you're going to have two sides of the coin for everything. You're going to have these people that are complaining they're not getting the arena fast enough, but then if they were to go ahead, like forge ahead, get everything set up, ready to build, you're going to have so many people talking about how they're blowing money on a new arena. So it's one of those things, like, I feel like as long as you guys have a successful basketball program, you're going to have the majority happy.
Yeah, and the big thing is that a lot of our fans that are saying build the arena, the athletic department has shown a willingness to invest into the basketball program, specifically with Nate Oates' most recent contract extension.
Yeah.
Making his buyout one of the highest in the country, and he's a top 8 paid coach in the nation at Alabama. That's a hypothetical football school.
I was going to say that's a historic mark there for Alabama, because, like, no offense to your like, historically, it's not like Michigan State or anything like that. Not a job where you would necessarily think like top 8 money comes in. So that is definitely a commitment to the future of the basketball program, and something that's very exciting in Tuscaloosa. Yeah, I would say build the man a new arena right now.
Yeah, I'm inclined to say that as well, but at the same time, I'm a finance guy, and so I understand, where they're coming from with that. They want to make sure that it's controlled by the university and not controlled by external factors. And that's kind of where they're at right now.
I'm a hoper and I'm a dreamer, so I would be on the other team there. That's not my profession, by the way. But anyway, let's move on to what happened this week for Alabama. Obviously, first game, what we definitely want to talk about is the matchup with Auburn. Huge game, the Iron Bowl of basketball. I don't know why that seems to be the thing that everybody's. Why don't we call it like the Iron Hoop or something like that? I don't know. It's like, get creative. I outsider's perspective, but anyway, huge game for the Tide. And you were telling me a pretty interesting stat about that game before we started recording here.
Yeah. So Pablo Escobarner, he's a good friend of mine. He also obviously a Auburn fan. It's a respect, but we go back and forth and like hit jabs at each other. He said that, and this isn't an official stat, this is just based off of what we know about the teams in the past. 6 out of the last 7 matchups between Alabama and Auburn in basketball, the more talented team has won the game. If you look at last year, Auburn swept Alabama. Obviously, Auburn was ranked 1 in the country at some point in the season last year. They were, I think, a 2 seed, a 2 or 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, and then the year before, Auburn's the NIT team, and then Alabama's a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. We sweep Auburn then. The only toss-up game, I believe, was the first year that Nate Oates was here, when Auburn came into Tuscaloosa and we beat them. That would be the only time that I think the lesser talented team won.
I mean, that makes sense. It's definitely like a rivalry that's gone back and forth. You think about the 2019, Auburn making the Final Four, and then you go to a couple of years ago, 2020, 2021 season, Alabama wins the conference and everything. And then, this year, Auburn was a 2 seed last year. This year, Alabama looks like they're on their way to a 1 seed. It's really kind of interesting when you think about it, like just how back and forth it's kind of gone in waves, so to speak.
I mean, it's one of those things that you think about, like, obviously, like, the more talented team should win, but when you have that rivalry matchup, there's just another level that's added.
Yeah, of course. So what did you learn really from this game with Auburn more than anything else, like about Alabama? You know, I know that I saw the conversation with Haslam. Is that how you pronounce his last name?
Yeah.
I forget about the consistency issues or the consistency concerns with Alabama. What did you kind of learn from this game? So to speak from this.
So just a first point. So I'm talking with Eric. He does great work. You know, check out Hazel Matrix. He has a bunch of, you know, analytics if you're into that type of thing. So the consistency thing Alabama isn't a consistent team. It's Alabama is, you know, outscoring, I think, their opponents at home by 25 points. And on the road, it's only like 6 or 7. So that's where the consistency is an issue. Is not Alabama isn't good or isn't consistent. It's Alabama's so good at home, and Alabama's, you know, so good, you know, scoring wise at home and defensive wise at home. When they get on the road, they're not, you know, putting up 25 points point differential over their opponents, which should be expected. But as far as what I learned from Alabama is, one, you know, in a game that you only score 6 3-pointers, and a lot of people will say that, you know, Nados's team is a live and die by the three type of team. It's not the case. You know, they scored 23 of 28 at the rim, which was 82%. I think that was the highest mark of the season, and was 6 of 21, I believe, from 3. The big key for this team is defense. We've allowed less than 70 points in every single SEC game this season, which is the first time that a team's gone 12-0 in the SEC and allowed less than 70 points in a game since 1953. They've also, the point differential is 21 points per game as far as like how much we're outscoring opponents. That's the best mark since 1995, 1996 Kentucky.
Oh, wow.
The other team that's done that is it's a Duke team in the 70s, I believe. So it's a historical performance, you know, so far through 12 games for Alabama. But more importantly, I think it shows that Auburn, while losing 5 of their last 6, I think they played their best game of the season yesterday.
It kind of took them a while to take over that game, but I can understand, like, from a come back and take over the game perspective, like, yeah, I would agree with that. Like, there was a path there that if Auburn had made a couple of better slot selections or anything, Alabama could have won or lost that game.
Yeah, I was more talking. I think Auburn played their best game of the season.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I think they defended us very well. I think Wendell Green, Zeb Jasper, and Katie Johnson defended exceptionally well on, you know, and Alan Flanagan, who was guarding Brandon Miller at times. It was Flanagan and Jalen Williams, I believe. I think they defended really well. They did a really good job of limiting Brandon Miller. He was 0 of 7 from 3, which I don't think that's happened this season. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure, but they did a really good job on that. And then also getting to the free throw line, getting offensive rebounds. I think we were out rebounded in the game. I know that we shot almost 60% from the field, but they did a really good job of forcing turnovers and putting us into half court sets that we were uncomfortable with, especially in the first half.
Makes sense. Matt, did you have something you wanted to say there?
Nope.
Okay. I just heard the So let's talk about the road inconsistencies that Haslam was pointing out with the first game of the week that Alabama is playing, and that is against Tennessee. I don't really know. We talked about Tennessee in the first part of the show here, but like my thing right now is that the Tennessee, I don't know if it's bad luck. I don't know if it's the fact that they've just completely forgotten how to play 3-point defense or what's necessarily going on. But what are your first initial thoughts when you see this Tennessee opponent coming in the TBA?
I think they're an elite defensive team. If you look at the KenPom metrics, they're still ranked number 1 in defense, even though they allowed 86 points the last game. Their offense leaves a lot to be desired. I think they're ranked 51st in KenPom in offense, which is up from 63 before the game yesterday. I think the issue with them is they're not very good at shooting. They have an ability to sometimes, get hot and knock down threes, but generally speaking, their offensive system is just, I mean, it's a Rick Barnes offense, which is built on defense, if that makes sense. I know that and so they're going to guard you really well. They're going to try to muddy up a game similar to a Mississippi State. But they just, if you can get them uncomfortable offensively, then you saw it yesterday. I mean, Missouri was eating them alive on some of their offensive sets that they were running.
I mean, that's fair. Do you think anything about like kind of wounded animal mode though for Tennessee? Because you're talking about a team that's lost 3 of its last 5 games, and they're falling right now in their tournament standard. Do you think you're probably going to get like Tennessee's best game of the season against Alabama? Because you got a huge opponent coming in. It is a rivalry game, and this is a chance for the Vols to get back on track at home. Are you kind of worried about a elite performance from Tennessee?
I mean, I think especially with the standing of where Alabama is right now, as far as like rankings, 12-0 in conference, and they're, I mean, kind of running away with the SEC. I expect going forward, and we've kind of seen it a little bit with these past couple of teams, like a Mississippi State or an LSU. Sorry, Mississippi State a few games ago, but an LSU, Auburn yesterday. I think you're going to get every team's best game, and I think that going into it, if the guys are a little bit tired or physically worn down from a physical Auburn game or physical Iron Bowl game that we played yesterday, it could be a situation that you end up dropping the game. I think with all the guys that we've talked to, or like in our group chats and stuff that we're talking to, we've kind of circled this game as like, hey, this is one of 2 games I think remaining on the schedule. Well, 3 if you Arkansas coming in, if Nick Smith gets back. I think that's
back.
I mean, like gets
back to himself. Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like, not if I know he's playing, but like if he gets back and kind of gets into the offense, I think that the Arkansas game on the 25th is one that you can circle as a potential loss. But the Texas A&M and Texas A&M and Tennessee game, those 2 games are ones that Alabama fans are circling. Like, hey, I mean, if we're going to drop some games, I think that's the one. Those are the 2. And then Arkansas, if, Nick Smith gets back into the fold and, starts performing like a top 10 pick, like we know he is.
Yeah. I mean, that makes perfect sense. Let's talk about, though, maybe something a little bit more positive. How big of a game is this for Brandon Miller? Of course, he's from Antioch, Tennessee. I don't know much about his recruiting coming there, to be completely honest, but is this kind of a coming home game? Maybe a shot at something that he didn't get a chance for at Tennessee. What do you expect to see from Brandon Miller in this game?
I mean, I expect to see a bounce back game from him specifically, not because of he's from Tennessee, but because, the game that he had at Auburn. I think that he's going to bounce back because of that. Now, as far as like homecoming, he's actually from Antioch, which is outside Nashville. So his homecoming game was the Vanderbilt game that we played earlier in the season at Vandy. I think he had like 50 or 60 people there at the game. I do think that as far as recruiting, he was recruited by, I think, Kentucky and Auburn. I'm not sure about Tennessee. I think he told Tennessee no. But as far as a get back game, I think it's a get back game just because of his performance that he had versus Auburn. I think he's, going to come out with, I think he played aggressive versus Auburn, but I think he's going to come out and perform a little bit better. Just because I don't think there's going to be, I think there's going to be pressure to win the game, but I don't think there's going to be as much pressure on the team as it was for Auburn because it's Auburn, if that makes sense.
No, that totally makes sense. So from the 3-point line, I guess this is my next question. Tennessee's allowed teams to hit 10 or plus more 3-point field goals made in the last 2 losses. When you see that Vanderbilt and Mizzou game, do you think we'll see Nate Oates put an emphasis on the 3 line in this game in TBA, or do you think it's going to be more of the? I know it's always an emphasis like in his game, in his strategy, but do you think it's going to set it up more in this game, try to exploit some of those weaknesses that might have been shown in those games?
Yeah, I think Nate Oates' philosophy is to take what the defense is giving you. If you look at the Auburn game, Auburn was kind of giving us that inside, points, which is why we were able to hit 23 of 28 from
the field almost. Yeah.
Yeah, interior. But they were really guarding the 3-point line, which is why we were not shooting effect.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know what was up with Auburn's rims, but there were some baskets that were literally almost all the way in and then would bounce out. It was wild. Um, but as far as Tennessee, I think the big thing is being able to establish yourself in the interior. And what that allows you to do is if you're able to drive and then kick out to the corners, then you start getting you're getting the defense out of position because you're drawing people inside, and then you spray out to the corners. And if you go around the arc to like the wings, then the guy's going to be open and you shoot a shot or you shoot a three and it should be open. So I think that if we can establish that, then it's going to be, an effective game plan. I wouldn't say specifically, oh, Nate Oates is going to draw up 3-point shots. I think that he's just going to, run some sets and see what Tennessee is going to give him, I guess.
That makes completely sense. What else are you looking for in this game against the Vols?
I'm really interested to see if Josiah Jordan James is going to play. He didn't play in their last game. He's a big presence for them for the interior in the front court. And I think that if he doesn't play, because he is a senior, he's one of their leaders. If he doesn't play, I think it's going to be advantageous for Alabama. I'm really looking to see if Rylan Griffin continues his kind of point streak that he's on. I think he's scored 12 points and 12. He's averaging 12 points in the last 5 games and is shooting over 50% from 3. And then in the last game, he, again, shot over 50% and was our leading scorer. I'm looking to see if he can continue that type of trend. And then also trying to see if Namari can kind of get back to where he was versus Florida, where he was being super effective. I don't think he had a great game offensively versus Auburn. So looking for those two things, and obviously Brandon Miller, see if he can get back into his groove shooting like he was.
I think we all want to see Brandon Miller. If you're a basketball fan, you just want to see great players play good basketball.
So I think my big question for you, Christian, I don't know if you watched the Tennessee Mizzou game, but it was rain and threes over in Vol Country. So, in my mind, I think, as a good coach, Rick Barnes would go back, look at that game plan and draw up a better way to defend from 3. Do you think Nate Oates is going to plan for that a little bit? I know you talked a little bit about 3-point game, but just when it comes to defense, you're already going up against this Tennessee defense and still ranked number 1. But do you think we see them try and execute 3-point defense a little bit more after that Mizzou game?
Yeah, I mean, 3-point defense is one of those things that it's kind of difficult to, like, you can defend perimeters well, but if you're running effective sets like Missouri was, I mean, they were running, super successful, back cuts and horn sets and different things like that. And it was just kind of eating Tennessee's defense alive. If you can run effective sets and attack a defense properly, then, as long as you're hitting 3-point shots, it's almost impossible to defend. Tennessee coming into the Missouri game was on a historical, 3-point defense type of run that they were on. I think at one point they were allowing like 20% from 3. It's kind of one of those emphasis things that, like, Nate Oates emphasizes 3-point shots in a practice on a given day, but as far as like shooting them and setting stuff up for that, I mean, he runs plays for them, but he always has this philosophy that if you're open, then shoot the threes. That's kind of how it is. It's not necessarily like, hey, we're specifically going to shoot more threes. It's like, hey, we're running an offense. If you have an open shot, shoot the 3. That makes sense.
Fair enough. I just want to touch on the last game since this is going to end up wrapping up our Alabama segment for the show this week. I want to ask about the Georgia game, and I'm just looking really for your general thoughts. I know that Georgia's got an extreme outsider's chance of making the NCAA tournament. They're holding on to their last breath of hope to make it. How do you expect Georgia to come out, and is this possibly a trap game coming off of that Tennessee game for Alabama?
I definitely think it can be. It's not even just because of the Tennessee game. If you look at including Tennessee, if you would look at our last 3 games, it's Tennessee, Auburn, Florida. Those are both, I think Florida's a decent team. I don't think they're, the same level as Auburn or Tennessee, but to start that and then go into 2 physical type of games that are Tennessee and Auburn. I think that it could be a trap game. If we were playing in Georgia, I would be a little bit more worried about the game. Obviously, we're playing in Coleman, and it's going to be kind of like a homecoming of sorts for the guys because there would have been 2 straight road games after playing Tennessee and Auburn. Arguably, biggest rivals. I would say definitely Auburn, but Tennessee, I don't know about Tennessee. I actually think, you guys will like this. I think Arkansas is a bigger rival in basketball for Alabama than Tennessee, at least at this point. But
I would consider it as well a bigger rivalry between us. But yeah,
But I think I would be more concerned if it's in Stegman. Obviously, it's in Coleman. I do think the guys might come out with a little bit lower energy in that game, but I expect the crowd to be packed out and kind of maybe help the guys lift their energy and different things like that. So I do consider it a potential trap game. Not as worried as I would be if we were on the road.
That's totally fair. All right. So my last question for the day. Why do you hate me so much on Twitter?
I promise you I don't. I just like to stir the pot.
I know you do. I know you do. I every time though. I mean, it's just really funny at this point. I'm like, oh God. Every time you do that and you put like a slant of like how I'm, like, I don't know, sliding Bama or something like that, it becomes just, oh my God, I've got to hit all these Bama fault burner accounts off with a stick. Get out of my mentions. Get out of my mentions. Like you've yet to do it to Maddie, like on our Twitter account, but like it's every time it's me.
Every time it's me, he just like ignores it because I just.
Well, no, I see the like M or D next to it. If it's a D, then I'm like, oh, okay, now I know who's talking. So, no, I like to mess with people. I do it with Martz all the time. I do it with
course,
Auburn.
you got to do it with Martz.
I actually did it with Martz. He did his like confidence. Oh, like this is the David Martz confidence, and I found the tweet after Arkansas lost, and I just put like a eye emoji, and then like just flooding his mentions.
He did redact that this morning. He said, "I will no longer be giving the David Martz stamp of confidence."
But yeah, it's nothing against you guys. If I see something that like can maybe just stir it up a little bit, because it. And this isn't trying to make me sound like not happy or thankful for what the program is, but on a 22-3 record, even our spaces get a little dry sometimes, where I think our Auburn space, literally after 30 minutes, I was like, I don't really have anything else to talk about because there's not like a lot of critiques and stuff. And so you got to keep it interesting. Otherwise, then, if I'm not arguing with people or stirring something up, then, it's just me posting random tweets on Twitter and it's not that as fun. So
I get it. Like, hey, no, honestly, I'm not hurt about it at all. It's just, it was funny because like I had War Machine and I mentioned, it's like, why are Alabama fans in here taking this way and things like that? And I was like, well, this happened. And you can blame Christian for this. And
I'm pretty sure David texted me earlier this week and he said, we have my biggest Twitter hater on the pod this week. I was like, okay, deal. I'll protect myself.
It's definitely not, it's all love. It's all love, and it's just messing around and having a little bit of fun.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a blast. It really is. And like I said, I always need more fans from more fan bases. Like we're trying to tap into some of these, I don't know, schools that don't even know basketball season's going on, despite having a chance to make the NCAA tournament. I'm looking at you, Mississippi State. I think I have 2 followers from Mississippi State right now. But yeah, no, it's actually fun, and like it gets me in front of more fan bases, whether they're yelling at me or not.
If you're looking for Mississippi State person to contact and to try to get your name out there, Lounge Dog.
Yeah, he retweeted us very recently. I know it's baseball season in his mind though. Like is the other thing,
Yeah, basketball space last night. I came in and talked about Mississippi State a little bit in there, so. He did. He had
after that game with Arkansas.
I you know what? I'd be boasting too. Like I would be. It's a big win.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I told you, I think all publicity is good publicity. It could be negative, but at least you're getting people to interact and see the account, and maybe they're like, oh, this count's bad, so they just keep up with it just to mess with you guys. or maybe they're like, okay, sometimes they make good points, sometimes they make bad points. Let me, listen to see what they have to say. So,
yeah, no, like I said, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, this is what the market I worked in for a long time, so I know exactly what you're talking about. Listen, Christian, thank you so much for coming on the show today, especially with the Twitter chaos that was going on. I could not find another Alabama or Tennessee possibility with DMs being shut down. Thanks, Elon, for all your help this week for putting the show together. But yeah, thank you so much. You want to tell everybody where they can find you at in case they haven't heard you on the show here before?
Yeah, well, you can find us at Crimson X Over on Twitter. We do, analytical breakdowns of Alabama basketball games. We try to keep up with the rest of the SEC, and statistically and different things like that. You can find me at CT Sykes. That's SYKES 13 on Twitter. We do pre and post game Twitter Spaces for Alabama basketball. And like I said, we do analytical breakdowns. We kind of analyze just different aspects of, what type of sets and plays that Alabama's running. And also, in pregame or during game memes. That's kind of what my thing is during games. So you find us there. And like I said, I really appreciate you guys having me on. And if you guys ever want me back, I'm always available.
Sounds good, man. We really appreciate it. Of course, we just got done talking to Christian, and one of the games that we talked about in the recap was Auburn. Auburn, right now, kind of in a death spiral, so to speak. Things aren't going good.
A 3-game losing streak down in Auburn. Big rivalry loss to Alabama, upset against Texas A&M. Auburn really needs to get some wins under their belt to stay in talks for the tournament. Yeah,
they've lost 5 of their last 6 games. That's a huge problem, and things don't necessarily get easier for the Tigers either. And while Vandy and Ole Miss are coming up for their final 6 games, 4 of those games will be against teams that are making a case for the NCAA tournament. You've got Mizzou, you're at Kentucky, you're at Bama, and you got Tennessee. None of that's easy.
Well, I mean, you say Mizzou and Vandy like it's discounted, but they've both been amazing.
Oh, no. I included Mizzou on the list of teams that are, making their case for the NCAA tournament. Mizzou's in a fine spot. You're right, though. Vandy's hot. Vandy's a hot team. So really, out of 5 of those next 6 games, that ain't going to be fun. And so you got to figure it. You got to win some basketball games. You're Auburn. You got to figure out how to win them because, as I said in last week's pod, it's a big deal. Alabama, that game at home against Alabama, could have put them pretty firmly in the NCAA tournament. Now you've got to figure it out.
Yeah.
You've got to win a game. You've got to figure out which of these games you're going to win to make your final last stand to make the NCAA tournament, and I think it's rough right now.
Definitely in must-win situations here. Mizzou at home, Vandy on the road. I think these are going to be rough games for Auburn. I could be wrong. But, both of these teams, like I said, are coming off some big wins. It's going to be hard to stop that momentum, and Auburn has to at this point, or they're looking at sitting at home in March.
Well, Mizzou's a team that can cause a ton of chaos. Yep. That's part of their MO. If they get going from 3, I don't know how Auburn will run with them. I just don't, because Auburn doesn't shoot well.
Yeah.
They're very reliant on Wendell Green and Jani Broome. They shoot 7, and this team also shoots under 70% from the free throw line. So if Mizzou's offense gets rolling, I don't know how Auburn's going to keep up with that. And then you're also talking about Mizzou also being a faster basketball team. I think where this is going to, it's all comes down to rebounding again. Mizzou is a poor rebounding team. That's the stat that if you're going to beat Mizzou, you have to win that stat, and you have to win it convincingly. And it's not because Mizzou, we have to out-rebound Mizzou. It's you take away their shot opportunities when you do that, and you limit their ability to run. So that's kind of the hope. And in Neville Arena, I'm a little bit worried about this. Honestly, though, as long as Auburn doesn't allow Mizzou to dictate things to them, I think Auburn wins this basketball game.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned rebounding. I think that is actually a stat that Auburn fares pretty well in. And if we look at that Alabama and Auburn game, the first half, Auburn played amazing 3-point defense, and I think that is going to be their shining hope to get a win here.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll see what happens. That's definitely a game I'm worried about if I'm a Tigers fan, and I'm trying to get people in the building to sell that one out.
One of the Tigers fans?
One of the Tigers fans, yeah. War Eagle fan. Like, let's just make it...
Yeah. That'll be a fun run for next week.
If I'm down on the plains, I'm getting people that... Yeah, right. That'll be fun to talk about. It's not like we didn't have to do this for LSU also earlier. We got too many Tigers in this league. Auburn just needs to fully transition to be the War Eagles now. Like, just to clean it up. Make life a little bit easier.
Exactly.
They're never going to do that. All right, Auburn on Saturday will also have to travel to Nashville to play a red-hot Vandy team. This isn't a game I expected to really talk about, but, Vandy has played good basketball here of late. They've upset Florida. They've upset Tennessee. It's a surprising run for Vanderbilt, and they do have, according to some bracketologists, an outsider's chance that they could win out to make the NCAA tournament. It's a very outside. It's about the same chances that Georgia has, but they can do it.
They could.
There's a potential for there.
The way Jerry Stackhouse has been transforming this team has been absolutely amazing to me. Yeah. We've seen from a pretty slow start, them
horrible start,
climbing up the hill to. I think are they even right now?
I don't know if they're even or not. I'd have to look, but they're
6-6.
They're both 6 and play. Yeah, Jerry Stackhouse has had a much better run in SEC play than he did to start the season, which is weird because he's playing better basketball teams right now. Yeah. But sometimes it takes teams a while to develop chemistry. So what I will say about this game is Liam Robbins and Janai Broome are going to be a tough matchup. You're going to have to watch these big men go to work, and whoever can win the battle on the glass may dictate what happens in this game. Additionally, Vandy does not have a good defense. Like that's the one thing they're terrible on, and they also have the worst net rating in the SEC outside of South Carolina. So I believe that's correct right now. LSU might be competing with them at this point, but it's still they're both negatives. They're both negative in the net rating, so it's not beautiful. So Auburn could get some good chances to get points in this game. So I do like Auburn, but the thing is I have not seen many teams go into Memorial Coliseum and shoot well there. It's the worst venue in the SEC. Memorial Magic happens because no one can shoot in that building. I don't know why no one can shoot in that building, but it's just a weird place to play basketball.
Yeah. So right now, as we are time of recording, South Carolina took down LSU 88-64 in women's basketball.
South Carolina with the win. So there's only one undefeated team left, and that's a tough one for LSU.
Yeah, tough loss. I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more when we get
to the women's basketball. We'll talk about it a little bit.
Good game.
Yep. Let's talk about one of the teams that Auburn is playing this week. It was a solid week for Missouri. Wins over South Carolina and Tennessee and Knoxville, as we mentioned earlier. Tigers are playing some great basketball under Dennis Gate, and Mizzou has won 5 of their last 6 games. It also includes 2 top 25 wins over Iowa State and Tennessee. Maddie, is Dennis Gates the best newcomer in the SEC this year?
I think you might be. It's definitely a case for it. We're seeing this Mizzou team bounce back from that Mississippi State loss last week. Huge game for Mizzou on Saturday. I rarely miss any Arkansas athletics, but I missed the last portion of the game watching this Mizzou-Tennessee game. It was amazing. Best one of the year, I think, in my opinion, for Mizzou this year. So I think we see them in the tournament at this point.
Oh, I mean, they're going to be there.
Yeah.
I think they're convincing enough, and they look good enough that they can do that. They're in the tournament. There's no doubt in my mind. I think Gates inherited a great situation at Mizzou, and then he brought in his transfer players, and that's why this team has gotten to the point they are. I think I've mentioned that a couple of times this season. Mizzou looks like they're going to be a 6 seed or higher in the NCAA tournament, but that being said, they do have some tough games that are going to be coming up, and we're talking about them playing Auburn, and they'll also face Texas A&M. And that game against the Aggies beat Mizzou pretty convincingly last time they played. It was probably the biggest downfall for Mizzou this season. And, in that game, Aggies dominated the boards, 17 rebounds. Again, Mizzou just not a good rebounding team, and that's been a concern all season. This time, the Tigers are going to have to be in Como for this game, or they're going to be at home. And in all honesty, though, in their first matchup, Kobe Brown had a good game, 12 points. Yep. Hodge and Golston also went for double digits for Mizzou. The only thing I can say for Mizzou is that they have to shoot better this time around and get a couple more of those rebounds and force more turnovers in this game. I don't expect much change in the atmosphere, or things should favor, Mizzou in the atmosphere, but I don't expect a lot of changes in this game. I think the Aggies are going to win this game, even in Mizzou. But it's going to be a closer version of this game, is what I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think, we look at Boots Radford and Wade Taylor at Texas A&M. I feel like Mizzou in the last game, they just couldn't figure them out. They couldn't find a way to stop them. I think they're going to have worked on that. Obviously went back, watched film. So, like you said, I think it's going to be a closer game, but I still think we see A&M take the win here.
Yeah, no joke. And I think it's going to be a tough one. That being said, Mizzou is playing great basketball, and I don't think it's anything bad to say that, there could be an upset in Como this weekend. It shouldn't take away from how well that team is playing. It's just a bad matchup for them, and it's a matchup in which I think Texas A&M is a team that can run with Mizzou at the speed that they want to play, and they just happen to rebound better and shoot. They don't shoot as well, but they play tenaciously enough on the boards to supplement that offense that Mizzou has. So I do have some faith in Texas A&M. Let's touch on Texas A&M real fast. On A&M, we're not gonna do a preview right now. We'll cover that in the Arkansas section, but Texas A&M is still the number 2 team in the SEC to this point. Can you believe that?
I mean, they took care of business against LSU and Auburn this week, which honestly shocked me a little bit. I think that Auburn game really proved that Texas A&M is where they should be in the standings.
They've made up a lot of ground to get themselves back in the NCAA tournament conversation field at this point. I mean, they were in bad shape. Yep. You can't lose to Murray State. You can't lose to some of the teams that they lost to in the course of getting to this point. They've made up for it. They've won some big games in the process. That being said, they are starting to look like a dangerous team for March. But this week, I think, is the first week we're going to actually find out who the Aggies are.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree with that one.
Yeah. So let's just recap their week real fast. They beat Auburn and LSU. Aggies swept Auburn on the year. It was a pretty solid showing now for Texas A&M to get those wins. Of course, LSU, you're going to Baton Rouge, so that helps the situation a little bit more in your net rankings. But Dexter Dennis added 13 points for that win over the Tigers, and Taylor was 6 from 11 from the floor. Boots Radford and Wade Taylor playing outstanding basketball.
Yeah,
let's just be real. They're terrific.
Let's see, Texas A&M fans, if you got any Wade Taylor posters, I said I'd put one up in my at-home setup. So send them my way.
Yeah, let's see. Aggies have won 5 of their last 6 games. It's really good. They're on a 3-game SEC winning streak right now. Toughest stretch of the season, though, coming up. Arkansas, Mizzou, Tennessee, Mississippi State, and Alabama, all to come for Texas A&M. We're going to find out who this team is. I don't know how high the ceiling goes for Texas A&M, but we're going to find out where they're going to be at as the season wraps up. If you win all those games, wow. If you get massacred in all those games, you got an issue.
Exactly.
So we'll see what happens with Texas A&M. But to this point, they look like they're starting to turn into a dangerous team in March. We're going to have a lot more data on how they look against tournament teams coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Yep, for sure.
All right, let's talk about... Oh, God bless.
I'm assuming this is Arkansas?
Oh, boy, you're right. It has been an up and down week for Arkansas. They got themselves off the bubble talks by beating Kentucky this week in Lexington. And then in Nick Smith Jr.'s return for the Hogs, they lost to Mississippi State at home.
Yeah, I think, Nick shook off some rust on Saturday. I think we really start to see him play his game next week against Florida. I feel like, you put kind of a buffer in there because an away game is going to be harder for him to get going. But I think it's an opportunity to get him more comfortable being on the floor again.
Yeah, let's start with Nick Smith before we go through this walkthrough with the Razorbacks. Yeah. Smith was out for the Hogs since December, if you're not following that situation or from another fan base or something like that. He made his return Saturday evening against Mississippi State and Bud Walton. Fans were extremely excited, standing ovation when he got back out on the floor. I did not expect Smith to get the minutes that he got against Mississippi State. He played 17 minutes. Eric Musselman said that there was no minutes restriction for him in his post-game conversation. So I found that interesting. Smith is still considered to be a top NBA prospect, somewhere in the top 10. It may be expanded just to look whose board is, but for sure in the top 15. It's kind of been sliding ever since he's been out. And also, Brandon Miller playing fantastic. Brandon Miller's kind of taken that number 3 spot from him.
Yeah.
But we'll see where he ends up at the end of the year. He does also add a deep ball threat for the Razorback. He is a pretty good 3-point shooter. let's talk about Arkansas and Kentucky real fast.
I mean, a good win against Kentucky. Fantastic win for Muss, seeing that he has now never lost in Rupp.
Yeah, he's never lost in Rupp Arena. That's pretty impressive. And they beat the Cats by 15 in Rupp Arena in a game where Kentucky needed to win. So, you beat an anxious Kentucky team that you need to win. Winner gets off the bubble, basically, in the eyes of some bracketologists. I've seen the Hogs much higher. I did not have bubble concerns going into that game. Just because Joe Lenardi says it doesn't mean it's true. But overall, good performance from Arkansas. They were dominant. They got to the paint constantly in that game and just, beat the tar out of the Cats in their own house. So pretty interesting as far as that game goes. Let's talk about Mississippi State.
Oh, do we have to?
Yeah, I tried to find a reason that Arkansas lost this game. I really did. And
they just couldn't get it going.
Mississippi State was +2 from the three-point field goal percentage and shot 60% from deep. Hogs limited the turnovers, had less fouls, and had 10 more free throw attempts.
Yeah, I mean, you watch the after-game pressers, you hear Anthony Black say, he knows that they should have won that game.
Yeah.
But he just couldn't get it going. And I don't know if it's, like you said, Nick Smith got 17 minutes in his return. Is it a chemistry thing? They are going to have to learn how to play together again. Just one of those games we should have lost.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said I was kind of surprised by the amount of minutes that he was giving Nick Smith out there because I don't think, don't get me wrong, Nick Smith was +3 in that game and the plus-minus for that ball game. So you're a better team with Nick Smith out on the floor, but you may be a better team overall for that game if you limit some of his minutes and just allow, okay, we're going to get him back out there and some flow. Because that's what I think was missing was the chemistry. Because I was at the game and there was moments where I was just Nick's open in the corner, right, Devo?
There were a few I was watching.
Just go to him.
Yeah.
And multiple times in that game where there was a disconnect with him being on the floor, just not understanding what his teammates were doing out there. And I don't know. I was very surprised by the amount of time that he got, but Arkansas was a better team with him.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's only going to get better. You may have lost the battle against Mississippi State, and it was not as bad as everyone's feeling like. Yeah. The feeling in Fayetteville right now is that you just lost to South Carolina.
Yeah.
That's not what happened.
We came close, but we didn't get there.
The feeling in no, I mean, they think that we're all just kind of assuming that South Carolina came in here and beat us, in Bud Walton. That's not the case. Yeah. There's actually, Mississippi State looks like a team that's going to make the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I spoke with my stepdad as the game was starting, and I told him, I said, I think right now what's going to be problematic is Mississippi State's defense.
Yeah.
And
they had a great defense. They had a good defense. They
played fantastic on defense. We couldn't get around that, and that's where we lost it.
Yeah, no, it was very frustrating. And like I said, despite what some people are saying on Twitter, I'm shouting out to you, Ben Brandon. Not that Ben Brandon said anything bad. He's been fighting these trolls all this morning. But Arkansas was a better team with Nick Smith Jr. on the floor. You're talking about somebody who adds 12.8 points per game, 21.7 per 40. And then you're talking about over 108 offensive rating. That, I believe, is higher than the Hogs team average offensive rating. Mm-hmm. And then you're talking about 1.2 3-point field goals made per game. He's the number 4 team player in the assists in the limited games that he has played. And Nick Smith Jr., of course, was +3 in the minutes that he had played against Mississippi State. You were a better team with Nick Smith Jr. on the floor. Just give it a minute for the offense to gel. And that's what Razorback fans really need.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about the games that they got coming up this week. Hogs have Texas A&M in College Station and Florida in Bud Walton Arena. First game, this is going to be a tough game for the Hogs, but one that will help their resume a lot. I don't expect the Aggies to have the same issues at home, though, that they had at Bud Walton Arena. Aggies were terrible from the free throw line in Fayetteville. Aggies won the boards and the turnover battle in that game and still could not pull out a win. Hogs are going to have to figure out how they can get to the paint again like they did in that first game because they were dominant from there. You've also got Nick Smith Jr. now back to if you can get the situation to open up the floor a little bit more, that'll help a lot. You need his 3-point game. Devo's got to hit some 3-point shots because that was, I know he had the one, but that was something that Arkansas had some issues. They needed more threes to fall for them in that Mississippi State game. So they could keep that floor presence down around the rim and give Ricky Council some ability to drive. That's something that they're going to have to work on. I don't know exactly how to feel on this. This almost seems like a coin flip game to me.
Yeah, honestly, I agree. I think hopefully as you like to say, wounded animal mode. Hopefully that's the Hogs going into Texas A&M because
It's
need
a possibility. Yeah,
they need to come out and prove themselves in this game. I think we don't really need to worry about their game against Florida on Saturday, but this one against Texas A&M, like you said, it's a little bit of a coin toss.
I think Arkansas is a better team than Texas A&M. Texas A&M has a better record, SEC record than the Hogs, but I legitimately think Arkansas is a better team than Texas A&M. That said, you're going on the road to a team that's excited and is desperate to make the NCAA tournament and make sure that they're staying in their standings where they are now. If they keep moving up, they want to keep going. They want to now get better seeding and not be an 11 or 10 seed. They want to be an 8, 9, 6, if possible, 5, maybe still on the table. I don't know how high their ceiling actually goes, but they're going to try to keep winning games. Arkansas is in a situation where you just lost a game that you shouldn't have lost. That's where wounded animal mode starts coming out. Exactly. A game where you feel a little embarrassed. Because Muss's press conference after the Mississippi State game was 4 minutes. You tell me if that man was upset or not, because I think I'm not sure, but I think a journalist was asking a question and he just walked out of the room, and I don't think it was anything against that journalist. Yeah. I just remember looking up from my computer and going, "Is the interview over?" That
was it.
Okay, we're done here. All right, but we'll see what
Looney Tunes. That's all, folks.
Yeah, exactly. We was just done, and he looked about as dumbfounded about that game as I was after coming out of it. So it would not surprise me if we have a very intense week of practice here in Fayetteville. And Razorbacks come out a little bit with their hair on fire in College Station. The Saturday game, though, is against the Florida Gators. Florida's kind of moving out of that, making the tournament conversation a little bit more into making the NIT conversation right now. It's not good. Gators right on that line of bubble team, and this will be a huge chance in Fayetteville for them. Very similar circumstances, though, to the Mississippi State game for the Hogs. Just like the Bulldogs in Tolu Smith, Colin Castleton is a big man who can do some damage. He is a force. We're going to have to see what the Hogs have learned about a very similar offensive style. The thing is Florida doesn't play the same level of defense that Mississippi State does. So it'll be interesting to see what the Hogs learned in that game against Mississippi State and how they apply it to a similar opponent.
I mean, honestly, if we are looking at two of my new favorite Hogs, the Mitchell twins. They have been dominating on defense, so I think they are going to handle Colin Castleton.
They're shot blockers. Yeah. They can get down to business for sure.
I think for this week at some point I'm going to work around a little invite to the Mitchell's block party. Yeah, and put it on Twitter for Saturday's game. What I
like about this game, though, is that center matchup. You're right. I do feel better with the Mitchell twins down there playing Colin Castleton. I think that is a matchup that Florida does not like, and then the 4 other players on the floor are going to have to win it. And I'll be honest, Arkansas's guards are better than Florida's guards. Yeah, for sure. So I think that's where we're going to see the difference in this game. Again, I keep saying Arkansas is better than teams, though, and this is why Eric Musselman probably is aged 5 years in this season with between the injuries and the young freshmen making freshman mistake issues at times. So it'll be interesting to see. But overall, again, I do think Arkansas is a more talented team. I don't think Bud Walton's going to let 2 games in a row slip like that. I'm going to put a lot of money probably on Arkansas to beat Florida on Saturday, unless someone else blows out their knee.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I got some wood here. All right. I just activated my dogs, everyone. Look at that.
Oh, did you not?
I knocked on wood.
I was wondering.
I knocked on wood. Everyone, I hope you're enjoying this. This is a fun little outside.
This
is why I need a Patreon. This is why we need a Patreon.
Right?
Yeah, we need a Patreon. Let's talk about Mississippi State. Okay. I'm just leaving this in the show. I'm just going to keep rolling.
For it, yeah.
All right. We mentioned that rough loss for Arkansas against Mississippi State. For Mississippi State,
huge win.
Great win. Great win. This is the fun of talking about a conference podcast instead of talking about your own team. So from in the reverse perspective, Mississippi State got the business done, got that Q1 win, pushing themselves a little bit better in that bubble talk situation. It's looking good. Mississippi State this week had wins over LSU and Arkansas. Deshaun Davis scored 17 points and picked up his 5th straight win over the Razorbacks. Bulldogs led for all but 3 minutes and 19 seconds of this game in Bud Walton Arena. That's impressive. Yeah. This team's defense is extremely good. Tolu Smith, someone to be reckoned with, and a dangerous, dangerous team. This week, Mississippi State will face Kentucky at home and rival Ole Miss.
As much as I kind of want to bite my tongue right now, I think I see them taking over Kentucky and Missouri. And I feel like based on the rest of their schedule...
Ole Miss?
Ole Miss, yeah. There we go. But But I think we see them take care of business with the rest of their games this season, and we see them possibly in the tournament.
I think they're headed toward the tournament direction. It's a really good first year for Chris Johns. Yeah. Ole Miss, to me, is a very easy win for the Bulldogs. Yeah. Mississippi State passes better, rebounds better, allows few points. The only thing I can find for Ole Miss that favors them is that this thing is being played in Oxford, and it's a rivalry game. I really like Mississippi State to push Ole Miss around at home in this game, and it's put Kermit Davis a little bit in the Inferno hot seat situation that he's got going on. Kentucky, though, this is a game at the hump, and it's going to be a big man battle between Tolu Smith and Oscar Tshiebwe. It's important. That's an important head-to-head in this game. Yeah. This is an important head-to-head game, like overall, because both these teams are bubble teams right now, and having that head-to-head over another team helps your resume going into the tournament to say, hey, look at us. We got the head-to-head. You should put us in.
Exactly.
Yeah. We should be ahead of that team, no matter what. Now, that being said, we've also seen the committee just say, well, we don't really care about that. Cite Oklahoma State in 2018. They have some complaints with Oklahoma at that point.
A little bit.
So, yeah, definitely very interesting there. If Kentucky can get the 3 bowl going in this game, I think it might cause problems for Mississippi State, because Mississippi State doesn't put up a ton of points. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be the catalyst in this game, is how much you can limit Kentucky's offense. Offensive rebounding and 3-point shooting are going to be huge for the Cats. Yeah. So that's where, again, this defense has to win this game for Kentucky.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we see Oscar Tshiebwe put up some big numbers, but like you said, Tolu Smith, I feel like it's going to be a good match.
Yeah, I do too. All right, so there's also some news that we need to talk about real quick. Of course, if you're following the story in New Mexico State, you know who was coaching at New Mexico State last year, Coach Jans. This week, New Mexico State announced that they were canceling the rest of the basketball season because of allegations of hazing. The suspension comes after the November 19th shooting on the Albuquerque campus of rival New Mexico. That left Peak, a New Mexico player, injured, and a 19-year-old UNM student named Brandon Travis dead. The university has not shared any details on the alleged hazing that is going on, which is a different allegation that is working on that's going on for the final suspension of the basketball program, or any of the names of the accused for participating in this hazing. Now, I bring this up to say we do not know if Chris Jans had anything to do with the hazing incidents, but he was the head coach last year.
Yeah.
And we do not know how far back these hazing allegations go. If I'm not mistaken, there are players and former staff members who are still there from New Mexico State who were part of Jan's staff who are now working for under what's happening now there. So it's something to keep your eye on, because I don't know how this situation is going to turn out.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of a situation that gets, not to make light of it, a little hazy.
That's one way to say it.
Yep. Because it's one of those situations, like, you could very easily have a coach say, oh, I knew nothing about it, wash your hands. Like, unless they have hard concrete evidence, it's going to be hard to pin Jans for anything.
I agree with you. We don't know any of the evidence, so I'm going to start saying that. Number 2, though, I don't think you cancel a basketball season if the allegations are we made the guys drink 3 beers and do a stupid dance. Like, that's hazing too, but I don't think it's as serious as what to warrant canceling a basketball season and like a money making successful team. This has to be something big.
Yeah, for sure.
And I feel like that's what instincts tell me. I have no evidence of that, and mind you, I'm not saying that's what it is, but my suspicions are saying that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Definitely going to be something we are going to have to keep our eye on, though.
Yeah, I just remember driving my car the first time I started hearing all the stuff about the New Mexico State game, because I was listening to the Eye on College Basketball podcast, and they mentioned that shooting. And like once a month or once every 2 weeks, something comes out about this New Mexico State stuff. And I'm just like, this is the weirdest story ever coming out of a mid-major program like this. And I don't know. It's nuts.
That's now kind of shifting into the SEC because of Coach Jans.
Because Coach Jans. So see how the rest of this story unfolds. But right now, Jans is guilty of nothing. He is not suspected of anything that we know of. There's not enough evidence or anything that is being leaked to the public currently. But it's something just to keep your eye on and be aware of. Let's talk about one of Mississippi State's opponents for this week, a team that is, whoo boy, Things aren't going good in Lexington. The Wildcats went 0-2 this week against Arkansas and Georgia. In that Georgia game, I saw very little energy from Kentucky, and they almost had Wheeler. And they were in bad shape. They had Frederick and Wheeler out, and nothing looked good for Kentucky in that time. Antonio Reeves was trying to win a basketball game for them in that.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, 2 back-to-back losses this week. I think as we get further, we see this Kentucky team hopes for postseason continue to slip away. Loss at home to Arkansas, loss at Georgia on the road. 2 teams you have to beat to get off of the bubble talk, and they couldn't come out ahead.
No. Well, Cairo Oquindo scored 21 points. Braylon Bridges and Justice Hill combined for 19 second-half points, and Georgia just beat them 75-68. It was really well done. Oscar Sheboy, who had 37 points and 24 rebounds in the first game, he came away with a little bit less this time, 20 and 14. Reeves also had 20 points for the Kentucky. That was just a horrible loss, and it's their second loss to a team that's not outside the top 100 in the net.
Yeah,
that's bad. That's real bad. Cats still only have one Q1 win this season. It's bad.
Yeah,
I just can't say any more. Kentucky has to play Tennessee, Mississippi State, Florida, Auburn, and Arkansas. Maddie, does Kentucky have any hope left?
I honestly don't think so.
You don't think so? So do you think they're going to have to win the SEC tournament to make it in March?
I don't even know if that's enough.
That's an automatic bid. I don't know how that's not enough. It's an automatic bid.
I don't know. I mean...
If you win the SEC tournament, you're in. But,
they aren't going to win the SEC tournament, though. Is more so.
Is that what you're trying to say? Yeah, okay.
That's where I was going. Yeah.
Okay, just trying to make so they're in if they win it. But yeah, okay. The last time I saw a team do that, who was in dire straits like that, would probably be Arkansas in 2000 with Joe Johnson.
I see it.
Yeah. So Oscar Sheboy, Joe Johnson time maybe.
Yeah.
There's bad shape, but there's a lot of good chances to get some Q1 victories to help themselves out. But right now, I don't know how they're going to do it with those road games that they have. I think Florida might be their only real Q1 chance that they have to get a legitimate win. Arkansas is going to be put together. I don't expect that Mississippi State game to be a repeat for the Kentucky game. I don't suspect that down the road. I think Arkansas will be back to gelling at that point, and then Arkansas fans get up for Kentucky. Yeah, I've seen way worse Arkansas teams beat Kentucky in Bud Walton Arena and beat better Kentucky teams than this one. So I don't know. I'm with you. I don't really see a lot of hope for Kentucky right now. They're gonna have to figure it out. We've talked about Kentucky's 2 upcoming games. It's a crucial week for them, and they need a win.
They need it.
They need something good to go. Real fast, for the rest of the conference, just to touch up on it real fast, I'm going to talk for just 10 seconds here, really, on Ole Miss, because as we get closer to conference tournament time, it's also the lovely time of the year where coaches get fired. And I think pretty firmly adding to the list right now on the hot seat, Kermit Davis, Ole Miss job going to be opened up, so here pretty soon. I've got a gut feeling on this one. What do you think?
Yeah, I think just based on their season, we talked a little bit about them, like, in the beginning on our conference preview episode, that Kermit needed to do well this season, and
it has not gone that way.
It hasn't looked great for him.
Yeah, the Frog is struggling out there, and I don't know what to tell anybody at this point. And Ole Miss fans have given up on the season. Yeah, they've given up on it. They gave up on it in early January.
Yeah. Well, I think, especially after the Mavarell injury, it just totally went downhill.
And that might be an excuse that he pulls up again, but, Ole Miss had injuries last year, too. How many times are you just going to allow it to happen? You need to fire it.
I mean, Arkansas had injuries, too. But you see where they're at?
Yeah, exactly. But,
a lot better position.
A lot better position than, one way or the other. But, yeah, it's repeats. I don't really... Ole Miss needs to fire him. Yeah. Will they do it? I don't know. But pretty firmly at this point, you have a brand new building in Oxford that people aren't coming to go see basketball games to. Yeah. That's a problem. That's a real problem. Yeah, it's a bad situation. Let's talk about women's basketball real quick. My computer does not want to work. You want to lead off this conversation about the recap real fast between LSU and South Carolina and how that game went?
Yeah, I mean, so just looking over the stats, they were playing while we started recording, so didn't get to watch this one, but just looking over, South Carolina took care of business in the first quarter, 24-15, and then LSU lit up and went 17-18 with them in the second quarter. So they were only down 10 at half, but they just couldn't pick up the pieces.
Yeah.
South Carolina looking like they went for a strong game, over 33% for 3-point field goals, over 57%.
Solid game.
South Carolina they just can't be beat.
Yeah, Cadarzo had 18 points, 13 rebounds. Cook scored 17, and South Carolina beats LSU.
Yep.
So it's a tough day for Coach Cam. Aaliyah Boston finished with 14 points, 9 boards to help the Gamecocks on their 31st straight win. Good grief. Those are just things you just... I'm telling you, the South Carolina team, early 2000s UConn good. That's where they are. It's a showcase. This was a showcase game, and Angel Reese, she did everything she could to help, but it was just Aaliyah Boston's day and the South Carolina Gamecocks. I will say this.
I mean,
with Boston and Reese, they combined for 39 points. They've combined 39 double doubles this season. They're excellent basketball players, and I think today we got a chance to watch a little bit of what the future of USA's women's, Olympic basketball team is going to look like. So
sure.
These are great players. So
we saw a huge game from Alexis Morris too. Kind of LSU's, I don't want to say underdog, but one that's obviously not talked about as much as Angel Reese.
Right.
23 points and 5 defensive boards. Solid game for her as well.
Yep. All right, Maddie, I've got 5 games. And we don't have to talk about them.
5 games.
We don't have to talk about them, but you can just tell me which one of these that you like the most.
Okay.
That I think are going to be huge for the women's game, or for the women this week to watch. Tennessee is at Arkansas.
Ooh.
That one's going to be fun.
That'll be a good one.
Currently, Arkansas is beating the tar out of Mizzou. We'll see what happens with that game. And I mean, they're beating them soundly right now. Mississippi State is playing Mizzou. Then we have Ole Miss and LSU. See if LSU can bounce back against a good Ole Miss team. South Carolina at Ole Miss. Ole Miss got a tough week in front of them. Very interested to see if they can get one of these wins. And then Alabama is playing Mississippi State this week. What do you think about those games?
I mean, obviously as an Arkansas fan, I want Arkansas to win that one. But the way that the women have been playing lately, I don't know if they can overcome Tennessee.
I don't know. You need to check the score right now for Arkansas and Mizzou. And Mizzou's a decent basketball team. And there's 4 minutes and 14 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Do you know how many points Mizzou's put up?
Well, 27 total. But
you just pulled up the score,
yeah,
didn't you?
I'm going through trying to look. But if you're looking at it, Mizzou's 4-7 in conference. Arkansas's 5-6. Tennessee started to turn theirs around. They're 10-2 in the SEC.
Yeah, they are. They're a good basketball team, and I think that's going to be an important game in Bud Walton. Now I will say this: the name Tennessee, when it comes to women's basketball, means juggernaut in everyone's mind. But this is a beatable Tennessee team, and I think if you get a good crowd in Bud Walton, Arkansas could beat Tennessee, so they need to, Razorback fans need to show up for that game. Yeah, that's going to be a huge basketball game. It's probably going to be the most. I think the Tennessee-Arkansas game will have the biggest consequences throughout the SEC. Not necessarily much on the standings, but where tournament hopes lie for certain teams. Yeah, and that'll probably be the most consequential game of the week. That and Ole Miss at LSU will also be a huge one to see if the Tigers can get back on track and get a good win as they're in pursuit of that number 1 seed.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen LSU fans start to turn out for women's basketball games, so I think that one's going to be a big one. I think LSU is going to get a bounce back win there. Yeah,
we'll see what happens. It's going to be another fun week of hoops. So I just want to welcome, Oklahoma again one more time to the SEC. I'm very glad that they're joining us. They're good.
We can make this a thing. You welcome Oklahoma, and I'll welcome Texas.
No one welcomes Texas. That's just my opinion.
I don't want to welcome Oklahoma, so
I'll welcome them. I don't care at this point. That other team just, It was funny. I tweeted something. It was what did I say? It's how do we replace you, or how do we return you to someone's
return to sender.
Some journalist was so excited. It was this Tennessee beat writer was all or not Tennessee, Texas beat writer was all yeah, hello fellow SEC fans, and I just immediately, how do we return you Texas Tech fans is like, no, you're stuck with them. They're your problem now. Like, you take care of the crybabies. I was like, oh man, I love Texas Tech fans in a weird way. Like, y'all just hate them as much as we hate them. So
There you go.
Gross. I don't know, but it's gonna be a fun week of basketball, fun future, fun everything else. I this is not a sponsor to the show, but Rogaine is a thing. So if you find yourself ripping your hair out through the course of making your way to March Madness, the madness before the madness begins, hair regrowth is a good thing. Toupees are out there.
Might need to hit them up.
Yeah, wigs.
I feel like it's gonna start.
Yeah.
Start soon based on that game Saturday.
Just for Men eliminates gray. It's good stuff everywhere. I'm sure you could recommend some products since we've talked about things like blow dryers on this show.
You're the night sky trying to make me see your stars, but the dark gets lonely. Now I see violet, I can feel silence, and the dark's all that I see. When your stars have burnt out and your heart makes no sound, I'll find validity